In chapter 4, we learned about the aggregate expenditure model. In my book, it's presented as wealth plus expected future income minus price level minus real rate of interest minus the marginal propensity to consume times tax revenue plus investment expenditures plus government expenditures plus exports. And then that right there in the brackets is the intercept. The slope of the aggregate expenditure model is the marginal propensity to consume minus the marginal propensity to import, and we multiply that by real GDP. In equilibrium, aggregate expenditure equals real GDP, so we make that substitution here. And then we're going to solve this for price level, because the aggregate demand model is the relationship between the price level and real GDP, which shows up in two places when the aggregate expenditure model crosses the 45-degree line. So when I solve for price level comes over to the left, real GDP comes over to the right. The coefficient of this y here is 1, which is why it's minus 1y here. I'm going to factor the y, and then I'm going to factor out a negative sign. And I'm going to recognize that 1 minus the MPC is the MPS, the marginal propensity to save. So the aggregate demand model has an intercept equal to wealth plus expected future income minus the real rate of interest minus the marginal propensity to consume times tax revenue plus investment expenditure plus government expenditure plus exports. And its slope is the marginal propensity to save plus the marginal propensity to import. And it relates price level to real GDP, and that relationship is negative since the marginal propensity to save is positive and the marginal propensity to import is positive. In problem 1 of homework 4, we're going to plug these values up here into this aggregate demand model. Now the cool thing is I have an Excel simulation that will do it for you. You find it in my teaching website. Go to howstar.com, click on teaching, and then scroll through until you get to MBA 620, and you're going to see it right here, simulated aggregate demand. Click on that. It'll open the Excel simulation, which looks like this. Now we go back to homework 4, problem 1, and we just start typing in values. Consumer wealth is $9.595 trillion. The price level is not inserted because the price level is on the left-hand side of the equation. Expected future income is $8.013 trillion. The real rate of interest is 4.85. The marginal propensity to consume is 0.72. Tax revenue is $3.05 trillion. Investment expenditure is $2.543 trillion. Government expenditure is $3.363 trillion. 3.363. The marginal propensity to import is $0.21. And exports total $2.999 trillion. The slope of the aggregate demand model is the marginal propensity to save, which equals 1 minus the MPC. So the marginal propensity to save is 0.28, which implies if you're given $1 tax-free, you spend 72 cents of it, you save 28 cents of it. To that we add the marginal propensity import. So the slope of the aggregate demand model is 0.49. Now we're going to go up here in part A and choose the correct answer. There is, so in part A we want to know if there's a budget deficit or budget surplus. The budget balance down here in the Excel spreadsheet is negative. Why is it negative? Because what we're spending, what our government is spending, is more than the government's taking in. So we have a budget deficit. And that budget deficit is $0.313 trillion, or $313 billion. We don't put the negative in there because the negative is the phrase deficit. The MPC implies that consumption increases by 72 cents for each dollar disposable income increases by. The MPS was 0.28. It implies consumer savings increases by 28 cents for each $1 increase in disposable income. The marginal propensity to import was 0.21. It implies that imports increase by 21 cents for each $1 increase in real GDP. The initial aggregate demand model, we need the intercept and we need the slope. Well, we calculated the slope down here, right? So the slope is 0.49. And the intercept, the value of the intercept is the value of the equation when it is evaluated when real GDP is 0. So when real GDP is 0, 0 times the slope is 0. Well, that occurs right here. The price level is 19.467 when real GDP is 0. So this right here is the intercept. And if you were to print this diagram off, you would label this axis price level, PL. You'd label this axis down here, Y, or real GDP. In parentheses over here, you'd put thousands of dollars. And in parentheses down here, you'd put trillions of dollars. And you'd label this curve AD for aggregate demand. So now we want to know what happens if the initial price level is equal to 11.66 or $11.633 thousand. We want to know what real GDP is. So I'm going to go down here and type in 11.633 and hit enter. And see what happens. So at this point, the price level is 11.633, and GDP looks like it's 15.98776. So I'm going to type here 15.98776. We're going to use 3 decimal places too. So down here, 3 decimal places means we need to keep only these 3. Since the fourth one's a 7 and it's bigger than 5, or 5 or bigger, we got to make that right there 8. We want to know what imports equal. Remember, imports equals the marginal propensity to import times real GDP. So the marginal propensity to import is 0.21. We're going to multiply that by 15.98776. This value right here. We can blow it up too. So C8 again is the marginal propensity import, and then 15.98776 is real GDP. It is the value that GDP is when the price level is 11,633. So imports equals $3.35743 trillion. I'm going to shrink that down to 3 decimal places. I'm going to copy it in to Cengage now. Now what about net exports? Remember, net exports equals exports minus imports. So exports totaled $2.999 trillion, and we're going to subtract off the import level, $3.357 trillion, and it's negative. So we're going to copy that into here. Net exports equals a negative $0.358 trillion. Now, because that's negative, we have a trade deficit. And that trade deficit equals $0.358 trillion. We don't need the negative because negative implies deficit. Now, suppose government expenditures increased by $0.326 trillion. We want to know what the new intercept of aggregate demand is. Now, why do I say the intercept of aggregate demand is going to change? Remember, government expenditure is in the intercept. So if government expenditure goes up, the intercept goes up. Nothing happens to the slope. So down here, government expenditure goes up by $0.326 trillion. So I'm going to copy that and paste it right here. So that was the old government spending level. So this is the old government spending level. Congress and the President have increased it by $0.326 trillion. So the new level of government spending is $3.689 trillion. So the new intercept is this value right here. Remember, the intercept is the value of the equation when real GDP is 0. The slope didn't change. The slope is still 0.49. I'm going to make that 0.490. So the intercept went from 19.467 to 19.793. So when you print this diagram off, the black line is the original aggregate demand curve. The increase in government spending shifted the black aggregate demand model to the red aggregate demand line. So it stimulates aggregate demand when government spends more. Again, this is the price level, PL. This is real GDP, Y, in trillions of dollars. Now down here, the budget deficit increased. Why? Because we're spending more money. The budget deficit increased to 0.639. It increased by the amount of government spending. It increased by that amount, $0.326 trillion. The increase in government expenditure is an example of fiscal policy, which is conducted by Congress and the President. Congress enacts the fiscal policy, and the President signs it into law. Now we're going to check my work, and we should get all questions right. And we do.